little later on with another update. Remember, you can stay updated online. Our website is at enca.com, and you can download the ENCA app as well.
Have you got your sticker yet? Also sticker as a
Help God, ego, sticker yet.
Be
an everyday hero.
Wees elke dag gejuicht. With persons with disabilities.
Get your Casual Day sticker now.
Visit casualday.coza and join us on Friday the 7th of September for Casual Day.
Your top story on Newsnight, a tough talk from political leaders on Women's Day as they acknowledge failure to improve the lives of ordinary women. Family and friends say their final goodbyes as Rhodes University student Kensani Maseko is laid to rest. And in the latest from Zimbabwe, Tendai Biti appears in court in Harare after being deported from Zambia. It's just gone 6 o'clock. The entire Newsnight team is standing by to keep you updated this evening. My name is Vuyo Mfoko.
Hello from me, Jeffrey Stevens. It's all to come in sports. Black Leopards' dramatic comeback win against Highlands Park gains plaudits.
Heavy rain and snow in the forecast for the next 24 hours. Lots happening over South Africa. Join me here in the Weather Centre for all the details.
Today marks National Women's Day, a day to commemorate the 1956 Women's March to the Union buildings. On that day, about 20,000 women marched against the country's past laws. The first National Women's Day was celebrated in 1994. 24 years later, how much has changed? And in the workplace, are women really empowered? Well, to help us unpack this, I'm joined by Jeremy Bayer, a counseling psychologist. Good evening, Jeremy. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, women are facing challenges everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, at home, at school, church. But there seems to be an assumption that given the progress that has been made over the years, the workplace at least is a little bit better or a much better place compared to other environments like school, for example. Is that necessarily the case?
I wouldn't say necessarily better. I'd say maybe at face value better, but not so. To give you some examples of things I still see. Firstly, as an example, I do a lot of training on sexual harassment. Why? Because I'll get a request from the company saying we need this training because we've had incidences of women being excluded from a sort of boys club mentality, which is still highly common in companies. Pregnancy discrimination and gender bias. Someone saying they'll go for a job interview and questions like, are you planning on having kids, that type of thing. Now that's discrimination, because the moment you say yes, then in your mind you're going to say, sorry, we don't want you. Issues around climbing the ladder. So women will say, well, we're not climbing the ladder because I'm a woman. Or I've been on maternity leave before, so the boss thinks, well, is she someone who's going to climb the ladder or who's going to grow in this company? No, because of that issue. Things about appearance. So if a man or even the manager thinks your appearance is slightly not what they would like, you'd still then get objectified in the company. This is something that are still here. Other things that are still here are issues around a lack of care or unsupportive management towards women's biological issues, and just a lack of concern and empathy in that regard. And then, of course, work-life integration and the challenges that women face, so going home and being exhausted. But I will say to you that exhaustion often comes when women work in environments that are punitive or are not treated well. So they go home and feel exhausted. Whereas if they work in a supportive environment, there's more effervescence and energy when they get home. So those are some of the challenges.
It's quite troubling, given that one would have thought that the work environment would be a lot better for women compared to other environments, precisely because there are laws that have been enacted over a period. There are certain things that are there that have been put in there to make sure that you can measure, progress against. And if those are not being adhered to, I mean, what hope is there for other environments, like school environments, for example?
Well, the laws, yes. So obviously, overt stuff, there's punishment. But the concern is covert sexism. And what I mean by covert sexism is condescending tone of voice, harsh emails, looking someone up and down, that type of thing. That is what I mean by covert sexism. So it's more subtle now. So laws are enforced for sexual harassment. Yes, that does happen. But has the concept of male privilege gone away? Not so much. It's a similar mentality with racism. Fine, you may not say the K word, but is the concept of racism in your mind going away? Not so much. And that's what needs to change. It's the changing of the thinking that's still the problem. And that's where you mention education. So that's where from primary schools you've got to educate, A, about mental health, but B, gender roles, and a changing of those strict gender roles, because then by the time you get to your company, the mentality is then entrenched. Still, though, the mentality remains, why? Patriarchal culture, drinking culture, still the thing of men don't talk about their issues, and because they don't, they then take their anger out on women, those types of things. So we still live in a conservative society just because there are laws. That's what still needs to change.
Now, when then you get called in by a company that says, look, we've had these incidents, we abhor what has happened, we hope and wish that it never happens again. Help us deal with this. What do you then do? What do you tell them?
Well, listen, there's a couple of things that need to happen. Number one, the company should have an employee wellness provider. Sometimes the man is doing it. Maybe he has a substance abuse problem. Maybe it's so maybe he needs to be treated in that regard. Not that that's an excuse, but still needs to be treated. From the woman's perspective, the same, because maybe there's trauma, maybe there's anxiety, maybe there's more absenteeism or fear to come to work. So there should be counselling in both regard. But as far as the man goes, he needs to know where the line is. Obviously, there needs to be good, solid disciplinary processes in place. And as far as the woman goes, resurrection of her self-esteem. What has been the impact on her? And two, knowing what her rights are. Because the number one message I can say for Women's Day to all women is no matter what, you keep your dignity intact. So that is what I do for them. Resurrect her self-esteem and her knowing what her rights are if this happens again. 100%.
Now, she's there, you've told her everything, you've equipped her with the information she needs, and you're convinced that, sure, well, at least you're hoping that, she will be able to put up this resistance. But what do colleagues then do? How do colleagues support, others who may fall victim to all sorts of things?
So firstly, don't minimize their problem. Don't say, well, you've had this, but it's not so bad. Don't do that. Two, don't compare. So don't say, well, if you think that's bad, I've heard about this others. Never compare. Three, listen, be empathic, cultivate a non-discriminatory environment. Because I always say, if there's stigma in a company or sexism in a company, that speaks to a general culture of discrimination in the company. So there's a bigger picture there. So you be empathic, don't judge, avoid advice giving. Because if they're presenting with mental illness symptoms, then in that stage I would refer. But listen, show that you care, because when people experience a trauma, two things happen. You stop trusting people, and you start to think that the world is a dangerous place. And that often happens with rape victims or sexual harassment victims. So what you want to do immediately is create that containing environment where the victim feels safe and that people around them can be trusted. So empathize and show care. Don't try and fix or anything like that, but just create that culture that we are here to support you and here to listen to you, and you can trust us. That word trust is the key word.
What sort of language sort of tells a survivor or a victim that you do indeed care? Because I've had cases of people who would say, I didn't mean it in that way. Or people who genuinely, like, truly mean well, but they just don't know how to communicate that.
Well, what I'll say in the beginning, in any trauma, you don't have to come up with some great quote or words. It's just your being there. So the first thing to say to the person is, what can I do for you? Or I'm here to listen. Try a small gesture maybe. Is there anything I can get for you? If they say to you, we don't want to talk now, that's fine. They want space, but don't give up. Keep going at it. So don't use phrases like at least or put it in perspective. Don't use cliches because it's just too easy and it's like a cop-out. Simple phrases like that. Don't compare, what I'd say is use phrases like snap out of it or pull yourself together, especially if the person has depression. Don't do that. Or phrases like lighten up or compare to people who are worse off, that type of thing. So care, listen, what can I do for you? Would you like to talk to me? Don't say too much. You can just use little prompts like, is there anything I can do for you? I'm here to listen. Is there anything you'd like to say to me? Can I help you? Those kind of things. Open-ended questions. But don't give your opinion or make judgment calls. Don't go down that route.
Okay, let's leave it there for this evening. Jeremy Bear, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For joining us this evening. He is, of course, a counseling psychologist.